What's going on, everybody? We are back looking at some more running backs today. We're looking at, five more running backs in this video, five more coming out in another video, which will bring us to 20 total. As always, I'm joined by my father, Dad. How's it going, Dad? My father, Jeff. How's it going, Dad?
Yeah, Father Dad, Father Jeff,
Father, Dad.
Boomer up,
Boomer up.
all the above.
Yeah, yeah. So we're here looking at five more running backs. If you guys haven't caught our previous two videos, we've looked at the first one. We looked at the top consensus top four running backs, which is Bijan, Jameer Gibbs, Charbonnet, and A Chain. And then we looked at six more in our another video. And we're going with five more today in this video, which brings us to 15. Is there anything you kind of look for, Dad, when you look at these guys? Because you just think about NFL drafts in the past. You're not going to get 10 guys that are going to be fantasy relevant, most likely. Maybe with this draft class, but everyone talks about the 2017 draft class with like McCaffrey and Fournette and I think Kamara and just a bunch of guys. I think I counted there were 11 guys from that draft class, and that was considered like the best draft class of the last like decade.
My God, I've been looking at running backs since the early 1970s, and holy crap, things have changed a lot. And what do I look for nowadays? I guess I look at do these guys have a big load in college? Did they carry the ball quite a bit and things like that? And we're kind of looking at the, I don't want to say the bottom half. We know, first off, we know running backs, they all kind of it seems like they're getting pushed down a little bit. Not in any draft scenario, the free agent market, money, things like that. There's some really good running backs out there. It's unfortunate that we see some really good athletes and things like that who carried the ball quite a bit in college, and they had good production and things like that. And geez, they're barely number two running backs in college. But eventually, we know guys get hurt. They're gonna get put into some game day situations, and we're gonna hear some names. We're gonna go, oh yeah, I remember that guy, and and things like that. And then the problem is it's almost not sustainable, for fantasy. But that's for us to figure out. We're presenting you what we've seen, and college wise, and there's some really good running backs here.
Yeah, definitely. There's guys that stick out, and yeah, just like we said, it's unrealistic to think, that much more than 10 guys. If there's 10 guys that are fantasy relevant, even for just a year in this draft, I'd be shocked. I mean, that's just a high number. It's probably closer to like 4 or 5 in every draft class. But the first 10 guys we looked at, I can see all of them going by the end of round 4. And all these guys, I think, that we're going to talk about are going to get drafted. Most of them, if not all of them, will get drafted, in my opinion. They'll be 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks maybe. But, and we talked about the draft capital and what it means for fantasy running backs, and it's very heavy towards the first 3 rounds. But I do think this draft class could be a little different just because there's so many running backs that teams could take the approach of like, you know what, I'm going to wait because there's 7 running backs I like in this draft class. So I'm not going to draft one now. I'm going to wait until 2 rounds later because I like 7 more guys, So we could see some good guys, good talent getting pushed into the later rounds.
I hear you saying that, and that kind of corresponds to what I looked at on video. So we looked at 10 running backs, and I thought, well, geez, 5 of these guys kind of look the same, Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't see anybody jumping out at me, like, oh my God, that guy's good. are great. A lot of these guys are really good and stuff like that, and a lot of them seem to be decent sized running backs. So let's get into it when you're ready.
Yep. And just one more thing before we get into it. If you could like the video, subscribe to the channel. Getting closer. I think we're 4 away from 100 now, so we're inching closer, and we're going to be continuing to putting out content. We're going to be doing mock drafts, rookie mock drafts, once we finish up the tight ends in next week's video. And so subscribe to the channel, like the video, helps us out. But we'll get into it. First guy we looked at was Chase Brown from Illinois, 5'11", 205. A little note I have here is he did have the most carries out of any Power 5 running back, which is he had 329, which is a crazy amount for NFL, college even more so. And he trailed only Bijan Robinson in forced missed tackles, which is a good stat. You want to see guys being able to force tackles, but when you carry it 329 times, you're going to have a lot more opportunities to force those missed tackles. But anyways, Dad, what did you think of Chase Brown from Illinois?
Yeah, Big Ten running back here for Illinois. Illinois was not a bad team. I watched this guy play for a couple of years, at least a couple of games, and again, you mentioned the load, 329 yards. He had over 329 carries. He had over 1,600 yards. Illinois was a pretty good football team, so this guy kind of fit into their mindset, kind of keeping the ball quite a bit, and he's got some good wheels. I think he's under a 4.43. So they just gave the guy the ball quite a bit. He was relevant in the passing game. He had 27 receptions. I know doesn't seem like a lot, but at least he's relevant. He looks the part of a decent running back. 205 pounds, and we'll see. He should be an RB2 or 3 on some NFL team this fall.
Yeah, that's kind of the role I kind of put him in. Is like he'll be a complimentary back. He'll be taken, probably in the 5th round or somewhere around there, and yeah, he'll be like an RB2, and those guys have value if the main guy goes down, right? Then your backup becomes the number 1 guy. That happens all the time in fantasy football, and that's kind of how you survive a little bit, is finding these running backs that kind of take over as the guys. But yeah, crazy amount of carries. I will say about the catches, I did notice 27 catches, which is a good number for college, but I went back and looked. He played in, I think, almost 75% of their offensive snaps, which is a lot. And I kind of mentioned this, I think, last video about NFL running backs. Like if you play 60 to 70% of the snaps, you're almost guaranteed 25 to 30 catches, just because that's basically like 2 emergency dump offs every game, and that just happens a lot. That happens all the time. So I don't know if he's necessarily a great receiving back. He could. I just don't know. We didn't see a whole lot. But yeah, the speed's there. 4.43 is awesome. He's not a huge guy. He's only 205. He does seem to go down with on first contact a lot, which is, don't want to see that. You want to see guys breaking arm tackles and stuff like that. And but his speed. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. He kind of looked like a, some of the videos I was watching. It was he was kind of a patient runner. So
yes.
He gets the ball in the backfield and he waits for blocks to happen, and all of a sudden there's a hole there, and he gets through it. So that's
I wrote that note down too. Like he he hits the hole well, like very well, like you said. Um, so yeah, and his speed's gonna play. Like someone's gonna like that 4.43 speed. You know, if you have a complimentary running back, like they're probably only gonna get, I don't know, 10 touches a game or something, but you want them to potentially bust off a huge run on one of those 10 touches. And a guy that runs, you know, a high 4.4s, in the low 4.4s, he's going to have that opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, he wasn't my favorite guy of the 5 guys that we're going to look at in this video. Maybe even my least favorite, but, you know, will he be in Dynasty rookie drafts? Probably not, unless for some reason, you know, he gets drafted in the 3rd round or he goes to just an amazing situation or amazing spot. But a guy to keep an eye on throughout the offseason and preseason and, you know, preseason games and stuff like that. So, apparently he also did have some fumbling issues. He had 5 last year, which is a lot of fumbles. Those things can be cleaned up for sure. I mean, you see a lot of rookie running backs struggle with the fumbling issues their first year or two in the NFL, but I see him as a complimentary back. I don't really see him. I don't think he's not big enough maybe to have a full load like he did in college. So, yeah, any last comments on Chase Brown? Or you want to move on?
No, let's move on to the next guy.
Yep, we got Eric Gray from Oklahoma. Am I good? Yeah, Eric Gray from Oklahoma. 5'10", 211. He was, you know, I work for PFF, so I respect the information they give. He was top 10 in PFF as a runner and a receiver. And only him and Charbonnet were the only 2 running backs to be top 10 in their running game and their receiving game, which is good. I can definitely see him as a receiver. Dad, you want to give your thoughts on Eric Gray?
Yeah, he looked Oklahoma. You know, he plays for Oklahoma. You know, Power 5 school, big name school. So, you know, he had 1,374 yards. You know, he looked like a shifty guy. So, good footwork and things like that. I'm not sure what his 40 time was. I don't have that here, but he didn't look slow. So the guy, you know, looked the part. He looks like he could be part of a you know, as a 3rd down back, you know, coming into the NFL and things like that. You know, I think he started off originally at Tennessee, then he ended up at Oklahoma. I mean, that's not a negative or a positive or anything like that. Everybody's kind of looking for their happy spot, but this guy looked pretty good. You know, he's 211 pounds, 5'10". I think those are good physical numbers for a running back. You don't have to be tall, but you got to be solid and stuff like that. So I like Eric Gray.
Yeah, I liked what I saw too. Touching upon his speed, I agree. When I was watching it, I was like, wow, like he looks like he's good speed. And then I looked up he didn't run the 40 at the combine. At his pro day, it was a 4.62, and I was kind of shocked by that. He seemed faster than a 4.62. In my opinion, especially at his size 211. I went back and looked at just guys who are basically under 215 and running in the 4.6s, and it's not a great list. You have like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Devin Singletary, Ronald Jones, Justin Forsett, if you remember him. Like, you know, guys that we all know their names, but they're not necessarily fantasy superstars. Just because you expect someone who's under 215, they're not going to be a power back. You expect them to be a little faster, but he did seem to play faster. So I agree with that. I liked his game a lot. He was one of my favorites of this group of 5 that we're going to talk about. I think he could be, a great, pass catcher in the NFL. Like, I just think of a guy. I think he's bigger than him, but like just similar to what like Jerick McKinnon did. Like maybe he'll get like 100 carries and maybe he'll catch 50 passes. I think that's within his ability, his footwork. Yeah, his cutting ability was pretty awesome. He kind of just left guys in the dust with his cuts and stuff like that. So like he can create in the open field, which I didn't get that with Chase Brown a lot. It was a lot of nothing jumped off the screen, as they say, of just like, oh yeah, he's creating yards himself and not maybe just there's a hole running through it. A lot of guys can do that, but can you create yards? And I feel like Eric Gray can. So I definitely liked him. They used him in motion a couple times on the videos we watched, which is, again, just shows like his capabilities. And he only dropped 2 passes on 90 catchable passes over 3 seasons. So if he's not going to drop passes, like teams are going to like that for sure. He will be 24, I think, like either at the beginning or middle of this year, which is kind of old for a rookie running back to be 24 in his rookie season. So I mean that is a concern, but he was probably my second favorite guy on this list of 5 that we're going to go through. So I can definitely see him having a role as a pass catcher, and for guys late into rookie drafts, 4th round or something. If there's a guy in there and you're like, oh yeah, Eric Gray, I liked his film. He could catch 50 balls this year, and we'll see what he does on the ground. Like, take a chance on him. You never know. Only one team has to like him, right?
That's it.
Yeah, we move on to our next guy, Mohamed Ibrahim from Minnesota. Couple notes on him before I get your opinions, Dad. He's 5'10", 210, 210 pounds. He had an insane amount of touches, 320 touches last year, or carries. Didn't catch the ball really at all. I think he had like 7 catches all season. He did have an Achilles injury, I believe in 2021. But he came back last year and he carried the ball 320 times. And one last note is he's going to be 25 in December. So that's extremely old. That's probably like the oldest you'll ever see for a running back coming out as a rookie to be 25. I mean, that's older than like Jonathan Taylor. I'm pretty sure he's like not even 25 yet. And he's 24. He just turned 24 in January. So Jonathan Taylor's going into his 4th year in the league. So what did you think about Mohamed Ibrahim?
Yeah, even going back further. So let's just, recap his college career. So he plays for University of Minnesota. So we're talking Big Ten. 2020, he had over 1,000 yards. 2021, he hurt his Achilles, which is usually, when we see football players getting Achilles injuries, we know those are pretty bad. But again, this guy, a little younger. Then he came back 2022, less than a year, and he had, 320 carries for 1,675 yards and 20 touchdowns. Those are insane numbers. Just like Mike said, receptions are like non-existent. 7, just he seems to be put together pretty well physically, and seems to have the decent qualities for an NFL running back, and straight ahead, kind of a, what do you want to call it, a plow horse,
Yeah, like a battering ram or something.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, he's not a Derrick Henry battering ram, but He's pretty physical. So, and he's and again, he is 25 years old. So whether that's negative, but I think some NFL team might like this guy and give him a chance for a few years. We'll have to see what happens.
A note on the catches thing. I just looked it up right now. Minnesota's the most catches they had from a single player was 42. So they just didn't throw the ball a lot in general. So it just might not be in their game. They ran it a lot with this guy carrying it 320 times. Another guy had over 100 carries. They had a running back catch 11 passes. So it's not like they had a specific running back to catch passes and they didn't like Ibrahim. So maybe he can do a little more than those 7 catches. But yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at these guys again, we're deep into the running backs. We're talking about, we've already looked at 10 guys that are probably all going to be drafted ahead of all these guys potentially. And so you kind of look for one thing that you can be like, that's what I can hang my hat on. Like, that's what I can see playing out in the NFL in terms of like for fantasy. He'll have a role on an NFL team. And like you mentioned with Eric Gray, I can see him being a pass catcher in the NFL. I like that for fantasy. This guy, though, again, nothing jumps off the screen. Like you mentioned, a north-south runner. He did run a 4.5 at his pro day, so that's good speed. If you're in he was 4.5 flat, so if you're in the low 4.5s and the 4.4s, that's really good. But again, nothing jumps off the screen, and he reminds me of like a solid backup that teams are going to want because you can count on him to get the ball and plow ahead, and not lose you games, right? Not fumble, hopefully. And if you need those 2 yards, he'll get you those 2 yards. And maybe you want to preserve your star back by not giving him all these carries for 2 yards. You bring him in and he'll get you that. So fantasy-wise, though, I don't really see much from him. I kind of put him in the Chase Brown category of like, yeah, we'll see. I mean, if for whatever reason he gets drafted higher or goes to a really good situation, maybe. But other than that, he's not a day 3 guy I'm really targeting for fantasy purposes. Good with Ibrahim. Anything else, Dad?
No, nothing else.
All right, moving on to our 4th guy. We got 2 more for this video. Is Roschon Johnson from Texas. He was Bijan Robinson's backup. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but it is possible to have backup running backs and be successful in the NFL. Miles Sanders was a backup to Saquon Barkley at Penn State. Ronnie Brown, if you guys remember him. Who did he back up, Dad?
Cadillac Williams. They were more of a tandem. They were more of a,
a 1A, 1B.
For Auburn, yeah.
Yeah.
They both got drafted in the first round.
And Ronnie Brown probably had a better career than Cadillac.
I think they
maybe not the better peak, but
injury problems. But anyway,
Ronnie Brown was around for a while. I remember that. Felix Jones is another guy with Darren McFadden, and Felix Jones went pretty high, I'm pretty sure. And Josh Jacobs, he was behind like Damian Harris and I think Najee Harris as well, potentially. So it is possible. I mean, he was behind what everyone's talking about, the greatest running back, since Saquon Barkley. So it kind of sucks that you're stuck behind him. Big dude. He's 6'2", 223. He had a 45% missed tackle forced rate, which was best in the entire nation, Power 5 or not. So he forced 45%. 45% missed tackle force rate, which is awesome. He was really good at pass blocking. I even saw him lead block a few times for Bijan. Like, someone's gonna love him, and they're gonna draft him. He could be. I've heard people talk about like, is he a top 5 running back in this class potentially? Because we didn't see a whole lot of him. Daddy, if you want to kind of recap of his numbers and what you think about him before I continue there.
Yeah. I like the power backs, 6'2", 223, as Mike says. He, he didn't have a huge amount of carries. Last year in 2021, 95, and this year, 2022, 94. So about 500, a little over 500 yards in total. Looks like he did catch the ball once in a while, 14 catches this past year. He's a senior. He's kind of like him as a running back. I think he's going to fit in to some team, and he hasn't had a lot of usage as we've seen with the previous running backs. We've had 300 carries and 1,600 yards, and so he's not gonna break off the long run or anything like that. He looks like, I used it on the last back, kind of the plow horse or a very physical runner. So we'll have to see how that translates to the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was in on, less than 50% of the snaps, and I think a lot of those he was probably pass blocking on a lot of those. Like, that's a really, really good skill to have. Like, that's going to get you on a team, and that's going to get you playing time if you can pass block. Teams are going to love that because that's so important for a running back to be protecting these guys. And yeah, like, who knows? Like, maybe he is a top 5 back, like maybe he's up there with Zach Charbonnet. He could just be really, really good. I mean, he's not super fast, which you wouldn't expect at 223, but he runs in the 4.5s, high 4.5s, but he ran a 4.58, which again, you're good with if you weigh over 220 pounds, like that's fine. And yeah, I really, really like him. I think he's my favorite out of this group. He does not go down with first contact. Like, you cannot bring him down with the first contact. It's like pretty insane. It's really fun actually to watch running backs, their film and stuff of just like how many tackles he takes on and breaks and stuff like that. But he will be loved by coaches. Like, he could be one of the only guys in this group to go in like the 4th round. Or even in the 3rd round, in my opinion. So, is he your favorite out of this group, Dad, or is there someone else you like?
Yeah, I kind of like him. I like that style of running back. It doesn't always work in today's NFL, but I think he's got a role somewhere, hopefully, and we'll have to see where it comes out to.
Yeah, he'll definitely have a role. I mean, and he'll be in the league. His type of style is going to be in the league for a while. I mean, I just think of a guy like, Jamal Williams is not super old, but bigger back, over 220, and he's just got a 3-year contract as a 28-year-old.
Scored 17 touchdowns last year, so.
Yeah, and it just, yeah, for sure. And just him getting a 3-year contract, I don't know the details of it, and I know it wasn't a whole lot of money, but to get a 3-year contract at age 28, it basically shows, like, okay, we think your style of play is gonna last. Like, we're gonna be able to use you for these 3 years. So I really like Roschon Johnson. I'm happy to take him in my rookie drafts. Maybe in the 3rd round or something, and he's going to get playing time for sure. And maybe he could be a better receiver, but we also don't know. There's a lot of unknown about him. I mean, he only had 94 carries. You compare that to like 2 of the other guys on this list who had 320 carries. Like, we just haven't seen a lot from him because you're behind Bijan Robinson. So I'm excited to see where he goes for sure. Anything else on Roschon Johnson?
No, I think it's time to move on to the Deuce.
Yep, the Deuce Vaughn, a guy that gets talked about in the Dynasty fantasy world a lot. I've heard 5'6", 176 might be the smallest running back maybe you'll ever see in the NFL. Like, that is tiny. He doesn't get much after the contact, like as you would expect. A guy that weighs that little, he runs in the high 4.4 or 4.44. He ran. Basically, what I'll say about him is he had incredible production at Kansas State, 290 carries and 1,500 yards. He had 43 catches as well, so he's over 330 touches. He's a fantastic pass catcher. He has crazy agility, really good speed. And the only weakness really is that he's tiny. But everything else what you want from a running back is like he has it, He definitely has it. And I hope he goes to the right team that gets creative with him and they realize you can't give this guy maybe not even 10 carries in between the tackles. You want to get this guy in space. You want to even maybe basically use him as like a de facto receiver, Like he's just basically a receiver at the running back position. I wouldn't even be surprised if he like switched over to receiver. So what'd you think about Deuce Vaughn, Kansas State, man?
Yeah, they, the last 2 years, 2021 and 2022, they really used quite a bit. He had quite a few yards rushing, 1,560 yards last year, 1,409. So they weren't scared to carry him the ball. They also threw him the ball, 43 receptions one year, 48 the next. So guy knows what he's doing when he gets the ball. Size. Sometimes as a running back, the height doesn't matter, 5'6" is obviously pretty small. 176 pounds is a little light in the loafers, so but he could end up in somebody's backfield as a third down back. He's got a comp of a Deion Lewis. I don't know if a lot of you guys remember Deion Lewis. He was a New England running back, I think, for a few years, and then ended up in Tennessee, and then eventually, after a couple of years in Tennessee, Derrick Henry took over. So, but real shifty, quick runner, as you'd expect at that height and weight, and he ends up in the right spot. We'll have to see. He should look pretty good.
I was talking.
You were talking and you were muted. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're fine. So I was talking about Deion Lewis, and he was basically like a poor man's Kamara or a poor man's Eckler, where half their production was rushing, half was receiving. Deion Lewis had a couple 40, 50 catch years, and he also had his best year. He had 180 carries, 900 yards. 32 catches, so he had 1,000 total yards and almost 10 touchdowns. So yeah, I can see something like that. Maybe not that many carries. I think, I'm just thinking in my head, if he gets like 7 carries a game, that pushes you close to 100. So I can see that. And then hopefully he does his damage in the passing game and he could be really good. He could be really, like, if Kansas City drafted him, I would say, like, there's your Jerick McKinnon replacement, And we know what Jerick McKinnon did last year. So he just needs to go to the right team. He really does. But, yeah, 5'6", 176. I don't know if I've ever heard of a running back that small. Because even Deion Lewis was 195 pounds,
Yeah, I was going to say he was a little more solid, I think.
Yeah. Another guy that comes to my head was... my mind is Darren Sproles, who's probably 5'6", but he was like 190 as well. So we're talking
built well.
Yeah, we're talking 15 pounds less and you see it in his gameplay. He does not get anything after the contact. So I like him though. I mean, if I had to rank these guys, I would go Roschon Johnson as my 1, and then Eric Gray from Oklahoma as 2, and then Deuce Vaughn 3. And then I put Mohamed Ibrahim and Chase Brown in very similar categories of just guys that I just don't think they're going to be the main guys, drafted to be the main guys, and they'll be good backups. And maybe if the top guy goes down, you'll get something from him, but you can't really predict stuff like that. So any last words on Deuce Vaughn or any of these other guys?
No, you could mix them together and pull a number, and that would be your 1 through 5. But the situation where they go to, and when they get in the game and things like that, that'll all matter. So
yeah, for sure. And someone's gonna, just going back to someone like a Deuce Vaughn, like someone's gonna like his skill set, and they're gonna take him probably in like the 4th. There's a good chance he goes in like the 4th round. And if you look at it, and it seems crazy because when you think of like a running back, you're like, no, like a guy like Mohamed Ibrahim fits that role. But it's like, it feels like you can find those guys every year, like a Mohamed Ibrahim or a Chase Brown. A Deuce Vaughn has a very special, unique skill set that you just can't find. And so someone's going to use him. And maybe he touches it 10 times, but again, you're hoping he busts a big one off on one of those 10 touches, and he's definitely capable of that. So, keep an eye on him. Keep your ear out. See where he goes. That would definitely affect his stock. So, I think we'll finish up there, and we'll be back with 5 more running backs to kind of finish off the running backs. And then we're probably just going to do one video on tight ends, maybe top 10 tight ends, and maybe even less. We'll see. And then we'll be getting into like really focusing in on the actual NFL draft, which is 3 weeks away from today. So other than that, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.